Hi, Eva. Welcome. It's so nice to see you from the other part of the world.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to meet with you today. Thank you.
Thank you. So tell me about your story. I'm very excited to have you here.
So I was diagnosed as having relapse remitting multiple sclerosis 11 and a half years ago in Australia. I may have had it before that, but I was diagnosed in October 2013. And I've been on a very long journey of ups and downs. And yeah, that's when I was diagnosed. So where should we start? My symptoms were I had vertigo initially and I couldn't balance properly. Um, so I found out after a couple of weeks that it was a sort of neurological signaling. And I went to the hospital local to me, and they ultimately did an MRI and confirmed that I have MS.
Wow. And that's you are in Australia, right?
Yes, that's right. I am located in the rainforest of Australia, where it's summer at the moment. Behind me, you can see a bit of
I
the
love
rainforest.
it. Yes,
Yes,
I love all the greens. That brings me so much peace and quiet. How old were you were diagnosed?
32.
Okay, I was 35. How was that news for you when you heard that you have multiple sclerosis? Can you take us back to that moment?
Deeply shocking and traumatic. My partner was with me at the time and he burst into tears. So I was in shock actually initially. But my first thoughts came back to a girl that I had gone to high school with, Nalima, and she had MS and she was barely verbal and she couldn't walk properly. And that's what I thought was coming for me. I thought my life was over in that moment, but was in deep shock. And to add matters worse, to add insult to injury, shortly after, I had a registrar, which is a trainee doctor, come into my room while I was in shock and my partner's grieving and crying. The registrar, took some of my spinal fluid, which was unnecessary, but I was in shock and I didn't know because they had already diagnosed me with MS. But I did have, it's called a spinal tap.
Yeah.
And it was among the very most traumatic experiences of my life. I had to sign a document saying I wouldn't sue the hospital if I died or my family wouldn't. And yeah.
Wow. I know so many people with having a spinal tap and being in bed for weeks after. I'm sorry you had to go through all this. What happened next?
I was put on steroids to dampen the inflammatory response and get a handle on this. I was unable to walk properly. I had a ataxic gait, is what it was called, and I couldn't walk properly. So they gave me the steroids, and after some time in hospital, I couldn't tell you how long, maybe 4 days, I was discharged and I was put in a wheelchair and wheeled down the corridors of the hospital. And I remember thinking, no, I was still really in shock, I was still trying to make sense of what this diagnosis meant. And I had family members come and visit me, and I just went really internal. But at some point, and I can't remember exactly when in a wheelchair, and remembering that I have relapse remitting MS, so it was on and off when I had flare-ups. But I remember thinking, this isn't my story. Just no, I reject this. But having everyone around me, my family, I'm Polish originally. I was born in Poland. My my family immigrated here when I was only 20 months old. My family back in Poland are all doctors. And my partner's family, his mum, my mother-in-law is a nurse. And everyone from my life where I grew up in Adelaide in the south of Australia, um, to Melbourne where I lived in my 20s, to Queensland where I live now, everyone everyone was pro-pharma. I didn't know any different, and I did not think that there were options available to me. I didn't know. I didn't know, but I had this deep inner knowing that this is not my story. On my long and winding journey, um, I really wanted to pursue my career. So I put my energy into that instead of healing, which was, in retrospect, a mistake. So the first thing I did was I signed up to go to university. My partner asked me if I wanted to start a family, and I said the most important thing in the world to me right now is to finish a university degree. It was something that was important to me. Maybe it was the way I grew up. My parents both have master's degrees. Um, my family all has these higher education sort of backgrounds, and I suppose that contributed. I call myself a lifelong learner because I am, and I loved being at university. At this stage, at 32, I was already an adult sort of student, whereas a lot of my peers were straight out of high school. And I worked really hard to like above and beyond what was required. I love learning, and I had a great time. It was hard. It was really hard. I worked long hours
But
to
did you have any MS symptoms during this time? Did you feel anything? Were you on medication? How did you push through?
I definitely was on medication, and I had probably at least one or two flare-ups. Um, how did I push through? I don't I remember the heat really getting to me. Living in the tropics, I remember having fatigue. I remember getting headaches.
This was about 10 years ago, right?
Yes, yes, yes. Uh, I was really already interested in how to help my body heal. So I was trialing different diets. I initially remember cutting out sugar from my diet, which was big. It felt like, a withdrawal, massive. It was a shock to my body. I cut out dark dairy. I cut out gluten. Um, I replaced everything in my pantry, in my kitchen pantry, with healthy foods. It was my whole focus, and I am fortunate to have had my partner's support during that time. I lived in nature. After my diagnosis, we got a dog who I loved so much. He brought joy to my life, this dog. It's he was when I was feeling so low and so sad and heartbroken, this puppy came into my life, and we went to see the whole litter, and I feel like he chose me. He came and sat on my lap, and he brought happiness to my life. Later, I started learning about vibrations and how we are a vibration. And I, at times, felt that even just thinking of him would raise my vibration. So I feel that he had an important part to play in my healing and my story.
I believe that too. I do believe that. So tell me about your lesions. How many did you have when you were diagnosed, and did they disappear over time, or what's the latest news on those?
When I was diagnosed, it was called an aggressive case because of the number of lesions, and they were like all over my brain. And I understood at the time that someone with only one or a handful of lesions could end up in a wheelchair and have terrible symptoms, depending where in your brain these lesions were. And I had them, they were widespread. So it was an aggressive case. And I tried some medications. I've tried 4 MS medications in my throughout my journey. And I remember looking at the pamphlets, and there were like happy people, sunshine, and then you start reading the side effects, and it's I yeah, I never wanted to take medication. I never wanted to take medication. And I was told by specialists that I made to feel that I didn't have an option because of the severity of my case.
Hmm.
And I did. And I took them because, and I was, focused on doing something with my life that was studying or making a career and being successful.
So you basically ignored, in a way, you didn't associate yourself with MS. You just wanted to push through, trusted the medication, trusted the system, and hoped for the best.
That's, yeah, interesting because I think deep down, even though I was surrounded by people who um, told me that this was the the only option, I had a knowing. I'm actually a really intuitive person, and I didn't trust it. I didn't trust it, but I didn't listen to my intuition.
Hmm.
And and it was a long journey because I was so busy trying to fit into what I thought I was supposed to be doing, what success looked like, and achievement. It's been a long journey, but during the pandemic, 4 years ago, I left my corporate job and I stopped taking medication.
Hmm.
Cold turkey. Everyone, was saying you shouldn't do that, all these things. And I went through a really, it was a very deeply distressing time for me because of the pressure the Western world was facing to have these so-called vaccines. And I knew I didn't want to. I knew at this stage I did not want that. That I was already on an experimental treatment. Can I say the name here in this space?
Sure. You can see it.
Ocrevus.
Ocrevus. Ocrevus?
Ocrelizumab is what I had been taking most recently. I
Uh-huh.
had taken it for at least 2.5 years. And so these are infusions that you have biannually. And there was a lot of pressure on me to take I had one of my best friends say, I'm losing sleep because you haven't had this injection. And there was pressure. I couldn't even speak to my partner about it at the time.
Yes. So, how is your healing journey been lately? How do you feel?
After I left my corporate job, I went on a 4 year journey of healing to where I am today. And I tried a few different things. Um, Among them, I fasted. I fasted twice, did a 3 day water fast, which, because I'm always trying to learn and read up on some of the science, and what people can do to help their bodies recover. And Dr. Volta Longo is known for his work around a fasting mimicking diet and the way it has the ability to reset your immune system. And so I did that. And I feel like that was a really big part of my healing, one part, because I know that it opened my detoxification pathways ahead of my doing a significant parasite cleanse. I did more than one actually. And firstly, I started with a herbal cleanse. It had been on my radar. It was something I was like, yeah, I should do that because I've never done one before. And was never taught that that's important. I'd never done a cleanse actually, really, other than to change my diet. I had never cleansed my body. I find that remarkable now when I think about it, but I hadn't. And so it was on my radar, and I did this Rogers Hood cleanse. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, a brand from America.
That's the same one I recently did. Yes, from Rogerhood. The three tinctures 3 times a day. And yes, it's interesting that it was 5 years after my diagnosis that somebody was talking about parasite cleanse, and I was like, I think it's time for me to try it. Let's see how it works. But I want to ask you about the fasting, the 3 day you said, no food for 3 days, only water and lemon. Did you say lemon?
Yes, the second time I was hungry on the third day, so I had a honey lemon and sort of technically broke the fast with that, but I didn't eat any food.
So you did this 3 day fasting, and then how long you waited to do it again?
It was 1 year apart.
1 year apart. Okay.
Yes. My son, I have a son, and he's 6 years old now. And as he was going through kindergarten and preschool, he caught a lot of things, you know. You're a mum, maybe you've had the same experience as they go through sort of early schooling, they catch everything. And in our case, I mean, we had COVID, we had all the lurgies you can imagine, whooping cough, influenza. I stopped giving them names after a while. We were so sick. My partner and I, and son, but my son, I call him a super healer because he was able to recover quite quickly. Whereas because I hadn't cleansed yet at that stage, I was sick for a long time. Not to mention, I had been on this MS drug that was killing my immune system, literally wiping out my white blood cells, my B lymphocytes. That's what Ocrevus does, and it is a repurposed cancer drug, um, which I found interesting to learn. And I was recovering my immunity, and I think the fasting, I fasted naturally the first time because I was sick. I was in bed, and I just I just wasn't even hungry. And I lay in bed, and what I like to say is that it's God's operating table because you are called to rest while your body cleans itself up, kills off all of the dodgy cells in your body, and begins to heal itself. Our
Yeah,
bodies are miraculous.
that's very nicely put because I do believe that when we fast, that's when we give our body a chance to heal because it's not busy digesting food and trying to figure out what's going on. It can just focus on healing. So, yes, it's very interesting. And I'm amazed that you also did Roger Hood's parasite cleanse. That's great. So you felt, how did you feel during the cleanse?
It's so interesting that you asked that because I had a really wild time. Actually, um, it happened, my cleansing of parasites happened, and I don't dig for evidence. I'm not one of those people, not to say there's anything wrong with that, but I'm not one of them. And I trusted. I trusted that I was doing good things. I trusted these natural ingredients, black walnut hull, clove, absolutely wormwood, fantastic. So I did it, and I recall feeling really emotional, sort of psychological manifestations during the full moon and new moons, interestingly, as I was purging these parasites. Yeah, so it was ongoing. I I think I did two in a row. And so you'll buy a kit and it says 4 weeks, but it lasts for 6. So I did it for 3 months the first time.
Mm.
And then by that stage, I had learnt about a drug called ivermectin. And so, for the benefit of your audience who might not be familiar with this is a well-known, incredibly safe over-the-counter drug that has been trialed and used now many millions, if not, over 1 billion people around the world. It's won the Nobel Award for being such an effective treatment against parasites. But people are now learning that it has much broader sort of capacity for healing than just that of parasites. It includes viruses. So I ended up taking ivermectin with praziquantel, another drug, which kills a boticide, which kills parasitic eggs, believing that it has something to do with my MS. And there are other practitioners which will speak to this as a potential root cause of MS. Dr. Alan McDonald is a pathologist in the States. I'm not sure if you've heard of his work. He now famously, based on what I'm seeing online, but it could just be in my bubble, he did autopsies on 10 people with MS who had died with or of MS. I'm not certain. All of them, so that's 100% of them, had parasites in their brain and or spinal cord. So with this knowledge and Pam Bartha, are you
Yeah.
familiar with her work? Yes, over in Canada. A lot of her work healing people with chronic illness relates to parasites also. So, armed with this knowledge, I call myself chief guinea pig because I was willing to test this on my own body.
Did
And
anybody tell you, any doctors, about these over-the-counter medication that you were taking along with the parasite kit?
absolutely not. No.
It's just
Parasites,
your
in fact,
research, basically.
exactly. Yeah. Doctors don't talk about it. And in fact, people say that you can't get them in the Western world, even though we deworm our pets, like we'd somehow not be susceptible to parasites ourselves. Having never cleansed in my life, it was a no-brainer for me, so to speak. It was like, yes, I've been around animals my whole life. I've had dogs throughout my life. I've been around horses. Um, I love animals. And I thought, yes, definitely, I'm going to do this parasite cleanse. So, in fact, I just saw my neurologist yesterday and regarding an MRI I had just to see what this parasite cleanse had done to my brain. And I didn't tell him because ivermectin had been made um, illegal over the course of the pandemic. For a time, I believe they've lifted that ban now, but it's still quite contentious. It was labeled as a horse wormer, and I'm very careful when I speak about that. But I want to be really honest about what I've done on my journey, and so my scans. The best part of my news is that I have resolved a my biggest lesion on my brainstem. I
What do you
still
mean
have
resolved? Like it's completely gone?
that. Yes, yes, I still have a lot of my other lesions. And so I want to definitely say that. And I wonder, wow, if I'd gone for longer, I wonder, should I do it again? I don't know the answer to that. And I'm willing to test that on myself because it's such a safe drug. It is known to be extremely safe.
When did you stop the parasite cleanse?
Six
And
months ago.
the drug also, you stopped with the parasite cleanse 6 months ago?
So I'm just Yes, probably September, late September last year, I stopped. I would have kept going for at least 12 months. But the reason I stopped and living in the rainforest, I got a tick on my head. I couldn't believe it. Like, is this fair? This is so unfair. Why is this happening to me? I was really
I
upset.
didn't know ticks are in the rainforest too.
Yes, yes,
That's unbelievable. I live in New
absolutely.
York and they are everywhere.
Really?
Yes,
In the city.
one,
I'm so
yeah,
surprised.
not in the city. We are in Long Island, but my daughter was bit by a tick last summer, and my husband found one by his belly. Luckily, they don't like me, which is good. But it's so. What happened after? Did you notice it? Did you go get your blood work tested? You're not infected.
No. So post-pandemic, I really was not wanting to go back to doctors. I stopped handing over my belief that they had the answers and I didn't go. I don't have any interest in going now at this time. Not to say that's just where I am at on my journey. And so I didn't know. What I did was it really knocked me around. I woke up with it on my head, and it was like, wow, my head really hurts. And I put my hand there and I felt it, and it was a big tick on my head, and my partner pulled it out straight away. But I was really knocked around by it for about 3 months. And what did I do? So I stopped taking the ivermectin because I don't know. My intuition told me to stop taking it. It might have even helped me, and I don't know, but I just felt I needed to slow down and heal. So ultimately, I took a homeopathic remedy called Ledum, and while it didn't work overnight, I took it for a short period of time, say a week, and it may or may not have contributed to the recovery of my health. Yeah.
So I do believe everything happens for a reason, and it doesn't matter what path you took over the 12, 13 years. It just matter how you feel today. And on a 1 to 10 scale, what would your answer be? 10 being your best self.
Yes, I want to say 8. I feel phenomenal. I feel really good. And the only reason I wouldn't go all the way to 10 is that um, I feel like my cognition was sharp while I was at university. And even though it was a challenge to study and focus myself that hard, I now know I was creating new neural pathways. I had these lesions, but studying and putting that effort in to reading and learning and using my brain helped me to create new neural pathways.
Okay. And what was your number, the lowest number that you felt since your MS diagnosis or throughout your life?
I hit rock bottom when I left my job 4 years ago, 4 years ago, because I had already, that was my second career at that stage. I'd studied, I'd achieved very well at university. I might just mention that I almost got straight high distinctions, putting in this massive effort. I got this job. It was really exciting. I worked with really large budgets, marketing budgets in that role. I flew around. I've been to Vietnam, to Darwin, to Melbourne, from where I live in the rainforest. It was a really exciting job, and yeah, was lost. I surrendered completely to, it was, it was a dark night of the soul. I don't know if you've heard that term, but it was like a rock bottom for me.
So, what would you say other than parasite cleanse? What was some of the other things that helped you on your journey?
I switched to eating organic food after my diagnosis. Um, I feel like that's really important. I know that it's more expensive than other food, but I shifted my mindset because I feel like um, it's also really expensive to eat out or to get packaged foods. I'm really careful about what I eat. I bring a lot of awareness to it. So that's been really big. The water I drink, I'm really aware of the water that I drink, and I make sure it's clean and filtered. I live in an area now which is on town water, but for the first 8 years of having MS, I lived on a property which had bore water, which can be good or bad, but in this instance, it was really pure. We had it tested by a hydrologist, and it was really very clean water. I showered in it, we watered our plants in it, I drank it. So, detoxing my life and bringing awareness to all the toxins going in, that was a big part. Parasite cleansing, fasting, um, big parts of my healing journey. I feel like they were aware. EMDR. I have early childhood trauma. I had traumatic events when I was young that I feel were part of how I came to have MS. Yeah, I'm a really emotional person, And I was affected by these traumatic events and I held on to them. They were stored in my body and they would come out. Um, yeah, what I now call my shadow side would come out at times when they were these repressed emotions. And I feel that doing EMDR helped me a lot to face them and release them. In fact, I feel really different since I've done it. Yeah.
Can you share more information about that? Because I'm not too familiar with that.
EMDR.
Yes.
Yes, it stands for eye movement desensitization. I'm not sure what the R at the end stands for. And it's sort of like, from what I understand, the gold standard in psychology today, where you're rewiring your brain. Um, as you sit with a practitioner guided through painful memories. You're following either a finger or an electronic sort of lights from side to side, and you're following it, and it's literally rewiring your brain while you're feeling these emotions. And it's something to do with passing the corpus callosum, which is the middle of your brain where your left and right hemispheres meet. It's it's letting it be processed. Really amazing. I believe it was, yeah, discovered by a woman in New York. I could be wrong. Definitely will fact check that. On walking through a park, and she was looking around her from left to right, and she's made this discovery. So I would encourage everyone to look into that on their own because it's quite miraculous. I would also say that while I was still at work, I had tried EMDR for 6 months with a different practitioner and it didn't do anything. I would say that because I did it and it cost a lot of money and I tried it. Maybe we were accessing the wrong memories. We tried to go back all the way to the beginning, and for some reason, it didn't have the effect. And so I was hesitant to try it again until my partner tried it, and he had really incredible results. So I did go back. And I also experienced relatively rapid healing in terms of that it took 3 months.
Very interesting. And the therapist, is she asking questions while you are doing these eye movements?
I suppose in the beginning, there's a lot of establishing things like adverse childhood experiences. Um, the lady gave me a score on this ACE test, adverse childhood experience test, and mine was very high. So they established what these memories were. And to be honest, I couldn't stop talking. This guy is sort of guiding the conversation, making sure that you don't stray too much from a memory in question. And I'm just like literally doing the talking. I'm speaking about these memories and trying to process and make sense of them and understand them. And then at some point he'll say, "All right, are you ready?" And we'll do. The guy I saw most for 3 months literally used his finger.
Mm.
And then at the end, when I was crying a lot and remembering crying is a release of these emotions, it's really healthy and essential. Crying, releasing, and I was crying so much that I was given these sort of palm fist shaped rubber sort of egg shaped things that had an electrical pulse that went from right to left while I was crying. And I cried so much on one of the days. I remember my face stung from the tears. I think it was a really important moment when that happened because I felt different
Mm.
since then.
It's so interesting. So I did past life regression therapy, and it's an hour, and you have to lay on bed, and they take you back to your past life if you believe in that. And I cried so much during that hour that I felt like never ends. And when I left that appointment, I just felt like a new person. So
Beautiful.
there are so many things that whatever helps for us, basically. You have to try new things.
One of the other things where that I cried before I tried EMDR was sound healing. Have you tried sound healing?
No, but it's on my list.
Wow, wow, so profound. And I'd come from this very conditioned life and reality where I thought that was woo-woo. I was like, what even is that? I don't know, but I felt called to try it. And trusting my intuition, I went there. I didn't know anyone pretty much. And what we did was a sort of guided meditation. So I had my eyes closed and we were breathing into a toric shaped field, which is sort of like a donut shape, where you're the center and you're breathing in these circles. And this guy was saying these sort of affirmations and releasing entities and energies from memory, something along those lines, and for the highest good of all. And then someone came around with koshi wind chimes, and they sound beautiful. And this girl came around and made the sounds near my ears, and I just started pouring tears from my eyes. I wasn't thinking about anything. It caught me by surprise. I thought, oh my gosh, there's all these people here. What's going on? And it was a release. I think it was an energetic release. So that was something that for me was really interesting. And I began to understand myself as more than just a physical body. Yeah. That there is an energetic layer and a spirit layer, like a soul layer. I was atheist 4 years ago and for most of my life. I didn't believe in God and I didn't believe in the church more so because, and I grew up in a non-practicing Catholic family. I just didn't resonate with the message. And when I left work and went through this dark night of the soul, I was at rock bottom and I literally said to myself, who am I and why am I here? Who am I and why am I here? Because I didn't fit into who I thought I was supposed to be. And I thought I was supposed to be studying to help people change their behaviors toward being more sustainable, but that wasn't it either. And I saw all of this corruption and disease and things that weren't aligned with what I believed to be true and real and good around me. And so I surrendered, and one of the first things that came to me was astrology. And I knew that I was a Capricorn. I knew that. I knew my sun sign. But what I did was I did my birth chart and I was blown away to learn that I'm a Scorpio rising and moon and Uranus in the late degrees, the anaretic degrees of Scorpio. So I was like, wow, that actually explains a lot to me at that time, if for those that might know a little bit about astrology and what that means. And it's said that people with Scorpio often, they're known for transformation and death and rebirth and going through very difficult cycles of initiation to be reborn in a way and to grow and transform. And I have seen that over and over again in my life. So that was so interesting because my Capricorn self was like, oh, you're a bit of a failure. You're not a director yet at your age. What are you doing? And so that was really interesting. And then, of course, to say that the whole birth chart is just completely blown me away. And I started deeply researching. I was very passionate about learning everything I could. And in that way, I have found God, I would say.
Hmm.
I went on to study human design, galactic
Act-
astrology.
Actually studied human design and astrology, galactic astrology.
Well, myself, I've taught
Yeah.
myself.
Okay.
So, no, yeah, I did a course. Human design is the most recent addition to my learnings, and I started doing that late last year. And I did a 4-week course where I learned, you could say, the basics. And yeah, I also found that really exciting. And even still love astrology, but human design was like phenomenal because it takes into account the chakras, numerology, the position of the stars and constellations at the time of your birth, and location, and it's blew my mind. I love
Isn't it
it.
fascinating that the more we are open to these type of things, it's part of spirituality, the more we learn about ourselves and easier to understand why we are where we are and where to go and what to do next and find healing that way. Because my spiritual journey started last year actually, and I did almost everything that every diet book shares. But that was the biggest shift in my health when I was looking inside instead of finding things outside.
Absolutely. Yes, I would agree with that. Definitely. So exciting. Yeah. Uh, Astrology and human design helped me to understand um, that there is something greater than myself, um, and how meaningful and beautiful that has been, and actually quite scientific, really, because it's not like completely woo-woo and unfounded. It's quite precise in certain ways. I would really encourage anyone to look into it if they have the opportunity to get their birth chart read. I literally feel like my wound is my health, and that I would use this to help guide and teach others based on my experiences.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing all this information. It might be a lot for some people, but I am so in tune with everything you shared and everything you said. Thank you for being part of this new video series. I'm very excited to share this video with everybody who's interested watching.
Thank you so much, Agota. And this is one of my first times on video. I've had a real thing about recording myself. So thank you so much for being the first time I've actually shared my story on video. I really appreciate it, and it's so lovely to meet you and talk with you.
Thank you for sharing. It's a big thing. I remember when I shared it the first time, I was not only nervous, but I felt vulnerable because I felt people gonna judge me. But no, when I actually noticed I'm helping them, then this is just the beginning for you too, I feel like.
I'm so excited. Thank you so much, Agota. It's been
Okay.
such a pleasure.
Is there anything else you would like to share? Any advice you would give somebody who was just newly diagnosed?
I think one of the most important things I would say is never to hand over your personal agency to another person, because you live in your body. No one knows your body better than you do, in a way, how it feels to be in your body, and to trust your intuition, because I feel like it's in there. It took me a long time to unearth my own intuition, but it's been a really um, beautiful and valuable part of my journey.